I was just talking with somebody this morning, and she was sharing with me about her take and her feelings regarding everything that's going on in our nation right now. And I mean, I don't want to really go there. This is not a political podcast,
Yeah.
like I don't really care which side of the fence you land on. I really don't care. Like I'm here. I believe that what unifies us is the kingdom of God, period, and not
Uh,
Christianity. I believe what unifies us is the kingdom of God, that
yeah.
we were created as sons and daughters of a loving heavenly Father. And if we could all just agree around that, and learn to live out of that identity, I think out of that place, a lot of these divisive issues would resolve themselves. But she was like talking about how and I hear this so much. So I'm just sharing this one example, but I've heard this so much from so many different people where she has one point of view about something that has happened in our nation, and she feels quite strongly about it. And they
Mm,
had friends over, and one of their friends had a very different point of view. And she
yeah.
shared that, now it's changed how I see this person, and I don't really know if I want to associate with them anymore. And I think a lot of people can relate with that right now.
So much. Oh my gosh. That's all I feel like on the political stance. That's all I see on social media is, "Oh, if you believe in XYZ, unfollow me right now. You're a piece of garbage. You're" it's like all so much all or nothing thinking.
So much all or nothing thinking.
So
And like, talk about and it's on both sides. It's on both sides. There's
Mhm.
not one side that's got it together more than the other side, because this is a state of being. So it doesn't matter whether you're left or right. If you function from this state of being, this is how you're going to perceive and process your life experience. And so
Mm,
it's on both sides. I'm not villainizing any side right now,
mm.
but I am bringing awareness to this particular heart posture and mindset because it's very destructive and it's extremely limiting. I intentionally keep myself open to, and I'm constantly seeking for relationship with people who see the world through a different lens than I do.
Yeah.
I have friends that are on different spiritual paths than I am. I have friends who have different political bends than I do. I have friends I think that because the Lord told me when I was in my early 20s, he said, "Tanya, ignorance is not just not knowing something." He said, "Ignorance is also knowing too much about just one thing."
Mm. Yeah, that
Right?
makes sense. Mhm.
So, in order for me to stay grounded in truth, I feel like I have to constantly open myself up to different perspectives, different points of views, different values.
Mhm.
I even remember, I don't know if I've shared this on the podcast, but like back in 2020, there was a guy friend that um, he had piqued my interest a little bit. I was like, "Oh, you're interesting." Like, I wonder if maybe we could be a thing someday. And so we
Yeah.
started hanging out with each other. And 2020 was a very divisive time in human history. A lot
Mhm.
of divisive, emotionally charged things sparked all across our globe. And he and I were not in alignment with some of these things. And I remember I just kind of cut it off in my mind. I'm like, "Oh, we're not in alignment here. Like this, I could never marry a man like that. We're not in alignment." And one day I'm in the bath, which is one of the places I connect really well with the voice of God. And all of a sudden, he says, "You haven't talked to me about this person in a while." And I
Mhm.
said, "Why would I talk to you about this person? It's done." And he said, "Did I say it's done?" And I was like, "No, but it's obvious. We're not in alignment over these things. He values this and I value that, and he stands for this and I don't agree with that." And
Yeah.
God was like, "Yeah, but don't you understand that you both have gone through different formative experiences that have informed your worldview and what you value? And that what he values is just as important to him as what you value, but you both have gone through different experiences that have shaped your value system and how you perceive the world." And he was
Mhm.
like, "There's nothing wrong with the way he perceives the world or the things that he values." And I
Mhm.
was just like, oh, So then the guy came back around and we kept hanging out, and obviously nothing ever amounted of that relationship. But like that was a significant moment in my own personal journey of realizing, oh, it's okay for you to feel that way about something or to have that value or to prioritize these things. Like, because maybe those are really important. And maybe what I think is really important too. And maybe they look like they're in opposition of one another.
Mhm.
Maybe they don't have to be.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah.
So now with this guy that I've been dating, we're not in alignment on some of these core issues.
Mm.
But because I walked through what I walked through with the Lord 6 years ago, to me, I'm like, oh, these are not deal breakers. It's okay for you to value these things or vote in these ways. And we don't have to be in alignment here. That's okay. But I think what's not okay is when we start judging and degrading people who don't see the world the way that we do.
Yeah. That's definitely where it becomes really divisive because then you're like character attacking everybody and it's just a cycle of character assassination and nobody wants to be in relationship with character assassinators.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. Exactly. So I think that it is absolutely possible for us to honor one another and even try to understand each other
Yeah.
when we have very opposing and contrasting opinions on things. And I think, and I've said it before, but I do believe that it is possible to connect heart to heart with another human being, even when you don't see eye to eye.
Yeah. And so would you say it's okay because everybody also has their own personal convictions from God, and it might not look the same for each and every one of us. And that's why we tend to get all black or white about it, all or nothings, because we look at that and like, that's wrong. God told me this. Say it's like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I'm gonna use a hyper controversial topic here that I don't think we've brought up on the podcast yet. And I wasn't actually planning on going here, but I do think all of this ties into where we are going,
Hmm.
because what we're basically talking about is how everybody kind of thinks there's one way. There's one right way to do it. And the one
Hmm.
right way to do it is the one right way that I think it should be done.
Mm,
Right? There's
mm,
one right way to vote about something. There's one right way to, there's one right politician. And the politician that I think is right is the one right politician, right? There's one right way to vote on a specific issue. And the one right way to vote on it is the way that I think it should be voted on. And so if you don't vote the same way I do, clearly you're wrong, right? Clearly
mhm.
you're opposing what I believe is right.
Yeah.
So the Western lens is very much black or white, right or wrong, which we've
Yeah.
talked about in a past episode. I don't actually know if we talked about this in a past episode or if we talked about it this weekend when we were hanging out, eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
It was this weekend.
Oh, it was this weekend. Yeah, it was this weekend.
It was.
Was that just this weekend? That feels like it was a lifetime ago.
I know.
Gosh, a lot's happened this week.
Mhm.
Yeah, because we were never designed by God to live with a worldview of judging or determining or knowing right what was right or what was wrong.
Right.
And when you go all the way back to creation story and you see that Adam and Eve were in the garden and in the middle of the garden were two trees and there was the tree of life which they were free to eat from. They were free to eat from all of the trees in the garden, all of the plants of the garden, except for one. And that was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Well, to claim to know what is good and what is evil is judgment, to
Mhm.
judge. This is good and this is evil. And so before they ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the knowledge of good and evil was not awakened in human consciousness.
Yeah.
So there was no grid for good or evil. Everything was just good.
Yeah.
Everything was one. Everything was God ordained and orchestrated. The differences between them, male and female, nothing was scary about that. Everything was good. And
Yeah.
then it says that, and this is interesting, Mariah, because this has only been highlighted to me in the recent year. But Eve took the first bite of fruit. So the serpent comes to Eve and says, "Did God really tell you you can't eat from any of the trees?" And she's like, "No, he just said we can't eat from that one." She engages the conversation. She engages discourse with the devil. "No, let me change your mind. Let me try to convince the deceiver of truth," right?
Mm. Yeah.
"No, he just said we can't eat from this one." And the devil says, "No, God knows that if you eat from this one, you're going to be just like him." This is a whole different conversation, but they were already just like God. Because in a few verses before that, you read that God said, "Let us make humans in our image and likeness." So Adam and Eve were already like God. They
Yeah.
already operated with total and complete dominion over all of creation. God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful and multiply and have dominion over the fish and the birds." But in a moment, she doubts what is already true and what she already has. She believes the lie of lack. She believes the lie that she has to go outside of herself to get something that she already has. And I mean, doesn't it sound good? Oh, God is good. I want to be just like him. I'm sure she justified it in a really innocent way, right?
Yeah.
And so she looks at the fruit, sees that it's pleasing to the eye, grabs the fruit, takes a bite, nothing changes.
Mm.
Offers it to her husband. Now, this is key. God told Adam. God never told Eve.
Right.
Adam told Eve. Okay. God gave the instruction to Adam. Adam was meant to instruct and protect his wife. Where was Adam when the serpent was tempting her?
Mm-hmm.
Where was Adam when the serpent was deceiving her? And this is not a bash on men. This is just a different point of view on creation story because a lot of people like to blame Eve.
Yeah.
Okay. So she offers it to Adam. Adam takes a bite. And then after Adam takes a bite because he is now in sin. He has breached the boundaries that God has placed upon him and his wife. It says that both of their eyes were open and they saw that they were naked and they felt shame and they covered themselves up and they went into hiding. Nothing in their circumstances changed, Mariah.
Yeah.
The only thing that changed was that now the knowledge of good and evil, now judgment, entered into their conscious being. And they saw, like, "Oh, you're different than me."
Mm.
And there's shame around that. There's fear around that. And I need to control that. And so I'm going to cover up the parts of me that are different than you so
Yeah.
that we're not so scary. And then they went into hiding from God because now they realized God is so good and we're not that great. They didn't have that consciousness before. They
Right.
walked in the garden with Jesus, but all of a sudden, oh, God is so good and we're just dust. Oh, why would a God like that want to hang out with me? I need to go into hiding. I don't want God to see that. God had already seen them. So their paradigm was shifted. Their consciousness was shifted. And what shifted it was the knowledge of good and evil. It was judgment. And there will
Yeah.
always be shame whenever there is judgment. Shame is the byproduct of judgment. So we think shame was the consequence of their sin, like God punished them and
Yeah.
made them feel shameful. No, shame was a byproduct of judgment. They
Wow.
opened themselves up to judgment, and the byproduct of the judgment was that now they also knew shame. because shame and judgment are two sides of the same coin. You cannot have judgment without shame.
Yeah.
You following me?
Yeah.
Right? So when we operate in our lives with this judgment of my way is the right way, we are eating from the tree of the knowledge of good or evil.
Jeez.
We're doing what Adam and Eve did in the garden.
Yeah.
And that brings in judgment and that brings in shame. And we will shame people who think different than us.
Mhm.
Or we will self-doubt and we will internalize shame within ourselves because, oh, maybe I shouldn't feel this way. Maybe I should think that way.
Yeah.
Right. And so now we have this culture where, for a lot of different reasons, there are so many I mean, part of it is just over information. We just know too much.
Yeah, I was thinking that right now.
We're
Mhm.
exposed to too much stuff and we're exposed to constant contrasting views on the same thing. And we are compelled in our Adamic nature, in our human nature, we are compelled to determine what is good and what is bad,
Yep.
what is right and what is wrong, what is good and what is evil. And so through our own limited consciousness, based off of our own personal experiences, subconscious beliefs, values, priorities, experiences, etc., we form judgments on topics and then we stamp them as this is truth.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, somebody right next to us is perceiving the same thing in a very different way and coming to a very different conclusion. And then we look at them and go, what? You don't think this is good? You think this is evil? Or what? You don't think this is evil? You think this is good? And then we demonize them.
Yeah.
No, there's another way. There's another way. A lot of the time, it's not all or nothing. And the example I want to use, because I said I was going to go here, which it's very controversial. And you thought that I forgot. You thought that I was dodging it. You thought that I was avoiding it. No, I was just painting the picture.
Mhm.
But the example that I'm going to use is abortion.
I knew it.
Well, because you know me.
Yeah.
The example I'm going to use is abortion. I want to preface that I I worked at a pregnancy center from the age of 21 to 26, 27. And so I would do the pregnancy counseling. We'd have women come in and they thought they were pregnant and a lot of them were uncertain whether or not they wanted to keep the baby and I was trained in, volunteer counseling and in trauma counseling and grief counseling. And we would walk them through. A lot of people have very strong opinions about this. A lot of people think it's very manipulative and all this kind of stuff. And then there's a lot of people on this side of the spectrum that think the other side is very manipulative. So, but putting that aside, all I can speak into is my own personal experience. And I know that every woman I ever counseled, I never tried to push or pressure her in any decision, but to support her in a time where she felt alone and unsupported and to present all of her options before her in a way that she would be well informed so that she could make whichever decision she wanted to make. And part of the services that we offered at the organization that I worked with was if a woman chose to keep her child, we would walk with her and her child until the child turned one. We would
Mhm.
support with diapers and we had a little closet that she could shop from and we offered parenting classes, right? So we wanted to support, like, if you're
Yeah.
choosing to keep the baby, we want to support you. If you want to have an adoption, we had resources that we would support. And if she chose to have abortion, we also offered abortion recovery. And so we offered support for every option, right? So we
Mhm.
weren't trying to push one option over the other. In that time, I found myself to be very pro-life, right? And so what does that mean? That means that, in the world that we live in America right now, there's two choices, right? You're either pro-choice or you're pro-life. It's very black or white. You're one or the other. And so to be one, pro-choice means you want to protect women's rights to be able to choose abortion if that's what they want. And to be the other is you want to take away the right for women to choose abortion because you value life and you think every person should choose life. So I leaned towards pro life. Now, as I grew, as I learned, as I matured, one of the things that began to dawn on me is that our God is a God of choice.
Yeah.
We see this when we go all the way back into the garden. When God created Adam and Eve, he placed them in the garden. He gave them the lay of the land. And he said, I've placed before you two trees, the tree of life and the tree of judgment, or the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And he says, if you eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you're going to die. Right. So ultimately, he's like, I have placed before you two choices, life or death. Choose life. Right. I hope you choose life. They chose death. We see this later on with Israel. God says, I've placed before you two choices, life or death. Choose life. Is it possible to live in the paradox of both? Can you be pro choice and pro life?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I am. I don't think that it's my right to take away another person's right to choose.
Mm,
But I also think the best choice is always life, right?
yeah.
And so I think the issue is not removing abortion as an option for people to choose. I think the issue is exposing the amount of deception and manipulation and insidious corruption that is entangled in the abortion industry because it is a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Mm,
I just heard a statistic that 1 out of 3 Gen X's is dead. Do you know why?
no.
Abortion,
Wow.
right?
Mm,
And now we make it very easy for people. I think we should not make it necessarily so easy for people. I think when we're in a triggered state, we're not always able to think with a sound and clear mind. So I'm not saying we prevent the option, but I think we need to recognize that it is an option that will have long-term consequences, not only on that woman, but on her future, on how she parents in the future, on our society. And so I think that it's something that we have to look at and go, if somebody's going to make this choice, we want to make sure that they have all of the information. We want to make sure that it's not something that they can rush into and do hastily. We want to make sure that if they choose it, we're supporting them and we're offering them ways to recover from it because most statistically, when you look at women who have had abortions, they have higher addiction rates. They have higher suicide and depression rates. They have higher promiscuous rates. They have higher self-sabotaging rates. 7 out of 10 relationships that have an abortion end up breaking up or getting divorced. So it puts a lot of strain on a relationship. When you just study sociologically the impact that abortion has on somebody's life, it has a lot of negative repercussions, right? So, but we don't talk about those because we don't want to shame anyone. We
yeah.
can talk about the cost of a choice without shaming somebody who makes that decision. And we can have compassion and we can support somebody who's made that decision and help them recover from it because at that moment, that's what they felt they needed to do. And we've all made decisions. We've all gnawed our own arm off at some point because we felt like we had to survive, you
Mm,
know? So I think if we can learn how to if we can learn how to cultivate a paradigm through which we perceive and process life through that is not all or nothing, black or white, good or evil judgment, and really try to understand and really ultimately trust God with all of it,
yeah.
that's where then you start to engage people they're no longer your adversary. They're no longer your enemy because they think different than you or they have a different value system than you. And
Yeah.
you can actually learn and iron sharpens iron. Like you can actually be chiseled and refined. I my my understanding has broadened because I've exposed myself to things that have caused me to stretch outside of my own limitations and think about things from a different way. So if I hear somebody, like one of my best friends, total opposite end of the spectrum, and she's very passionate about it. When I hear her talk about her stuff, I don't diminish her. I'm not like, oh, here she goes again, or oh, she's so foolish, or I don't do that. I'm like, she's very passionate about this. What can I learn about her? What can I learn about her through her worldview, through her
Yeah.
values? And that's what I mean when I say connecting heart to heart when we can't connect eye to eye.
Yeah, because it's not like you're trying to learn about her stuff so you can take it a part of your own, like, especially if you really don't agree with it. That's the eye to eye part, but the heart to heart is the relational part. Mhm.
Exactly. Yeah. And
Yeah.
also be willing to adjust course, right? Like
Mhm.
I had one view. I was religiously indoctrinated, and to be Christian is to be pro-life. Well, yeah, I still to this day, I value life. I think
Mhm.
I don't th- I personally, with the research I've done, I don't believe that abortion is ever the best choice for a woman, including rape. I mean, there's studies out there to prove it, right? When a woman goes through rape, it's a trauma, and then she has an abortion, it's compound trauma. It's two
Yeah.
traumas. Whereas if a woman goes through rape and then she chooses to keep that baby, or she chooses to birth that baby and offer that baby up for adoption, it actually creates a redemptive experience for her. It brings
Mhm.
purpose to her pain. She endures that. She lives through it for 9 months, and that can actually be a very healing process for her instead of one trauma after the next. So,
Yeah.
you know, I have people in my life, women that I know personally who have had abortions. I've worked with abortion recovery. I have no judgment or shame or condemnation towards any woman who this is not me shame. The whole point of this is let's not judge each other, right? So if you're feeling judged or condemned or shamed, then I would say, are you judging yourself, right? Because
Mhm.
Tanya is not judging you. But if we can stop eating from that tree and start really looking to the source of life for what does God say about this? What is God's perspective? Like we said, when we're seeing things one way and then he flips the script, he brings in a whole new way of looking at it. And you're like, what? I never would have thought of it that way. But are we willing to be humble enough to have our own beliefs and values and convictions challenged?
Right.
Are we willing? Are we willing to allow God to shape and form us beyond what we think we need to look like or be, or how we think we need to think about things?